The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu is an Asian inspired epic fantasy published in 2015. I like this book. I really like Ken Liu's writing, hence why I started buying the other books in the series after I was like 50 pages in. It isn't unorthodox, and you know what? SFX said this on the front cover as a review that it is beyond ambitious in scope, and that is so true. But before I get into my review of it, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell us what you think about it in the comments. Also, guys, consider subscribing to my Patreon as well. Help support the channel. I have full-length book reviews, and I might be starting a book club on there also. But the Grace of Kings, the premise of this is a lot. This is essentially a mix of one massive prologue, and it's kind of like a history book at the same time. It is set in the lands of Dara, which is made up of many different territories that differ greatly to one another, and they also, as what usually is the case, specialize in different things. Um, this is a very beloved book and a very beloved series, and I can't wait to get to the rest of the series. It was a 4 star. I did give it that, and I did like it enough to obviously purchase the rest of the series. But I don't know. It's a strange book, especially because it's a prologue, and like when you get those type of books, right? Usually, what happens? You get the main series of a book, main trilogy or whatnot. Say, for example, even the Arc of a Scythe. We got the main three books, right? Then we got a collection of short stories with gleanings that kind of acts as a prologue as well and expands the world a bit. We get it with the Hunger Games. You got the original trilogy, then you got the recent two, a song of the ballads and whatnot. So usually, like that's the way it goes. You know, Maze Runner did that also. That's usually how it goes. But Ken Liu, I like that he put it at the start. It was a risk. It was a risk, and I think it paid off. What people think about the Dandelion Dynasty and everything, just their views on it and where it ranks in people's top fantasy series and whatnot, I think it was a good thing. But in this book, we start off with a tyrant who quelled all the territories because they were beefing and brought them under one rule. And he did it with an iron fist. He seems to be one, as the book goes on, he seems to be, at the start, he seems to be just a cut and dry, sort of like oppressor type. But he's essentially one of those tyrants that history kind of remembers differently as he was presented, especially as the book goes on. But I like that we got a glimpse into what he felt at the start of the book. Quote, above all, he was bored. No matter where he went, the pledges of fealty and declarations of submission all sounded the same. And that was an interesting quote, and I did really like that because once you start getting into the rebellion and everything, the submission and honor and family bloodlines and all that really do play a big part. And in this book, we follow various characters as the rebellion grows all over this world. Um, there are assassination attempts. There are multiple battles. It is all quite nuts. There is a high turnover of leadership in this book. It is just literally everyone can get it, literally. Um, and I love this quote about the rebellion. I think the rebellion is only the beginning, Luan said. It's like the start of a deer hunt. Many lie in the field, brandishing their bows and spears, but as for who will bring down the stag, there is no way yet to know. How the hunt will end is up to all of us. And this quote just goes to show how many players are involved in the rebellion. Like it's rebellions. I say rebellion, it's rebellions to be to be fair. There's a lot of players. A lot of players. And before we get onto the characters, there's the themes of honor, especially in one's heritage, is just so is in everything, especially with one particular character, but it's in everything. We got obviously there's serious oppression, heavy political themes, including sort of sexual relationships and politics around that. Also, it's a lot. It is a lot, but it's really really good. Moving on to the characters, though, we could say our main character is Junny, we follow as at the start of the book as a boy, and he grows, and by the end of the book he's well into adulthood. But Johnny is brilliant, but he's sort of like one of those brilliant mavericks that ends up being aimless in life because society isn't really structured for him. So he does a lot of just wild stuff. He's a wild guy who thinks out of the box constantly. We have Rin, who's his best friend, also Gia, who ends up being his wife, and who I have a feeling becomes a major player as the series goes on. So I think Rin also. Gia is like a herbalist. She's a red-headed girl who wrote at the start of the book an hilarious poem to scare away a potential suitor, and that like a matchmaker brought for her. She's another one that's sort of like she has an unorthodox streak about her as well. She's not an as unorthodox as Johnny, but she's one of those where her and Johnny are such a brilliant pair. Their relationship and how that evolves and how it really gets stretched to its limit as the book goes on and as the rebellion grows is a lot. It really, really is a lot. Anyway, the tyrant that I was talking about earlier, Emperor Mapideri, I should say, he ruled through fear, but he eventually got old and weak. And what's crazy about him is that, like any sort of like emperor, he has like all these grand visions for the world, such as like this underwater tunnel that would link multiple countries and islands together, and all sorts. But eventually his time comes, I should say. Let me just leave it as that. Um, but yeah, it's he's you know what, it's one of them ones, and I think the characters realize this as they rebel, as certain characters will be part of rebellion and come into positions of power, that it's not always easy to rule. It's not a straightforward thing at all. So the emperor, how he's looked at kind of changes a bit. We also have gods in this book that are siblings with a turbulent history. They are bound not to fight each other or any of the mortals. Um, but if the god of volcanoes makes one erupt and a human is in the way, then it's not a violation. There are loopholes to the constraints that they have. I like that there are like parts of books where the gods would like something would happen, and then we get like a little conversation after the event with the gods, and they're talking to whatever, it might be the god of the sea or whatever, whoever's involved, depending on their sort of like specialty, I should say. um I like that they would question and sort of bait each other, and you can see that there's like sort of political maneuverings going on between the siblings, because they're prodding and asking if they did this and they did that, or they made the humans react this way or that way, and they also question if really it's not the humans that are really controlling them, but they just don't know it. So again, I like the gods as well. That's very, very interesting as well. And they don't take up a lot of space in this book. We rarely, it takes a while for them to even get introduced like properly, because obviously like the normal people talk about the gods and whatnot, but in terms of like actually meeting them, it takes a while, and they're sort of scattered throughout the book. They don't really take up a lot of time. But I again, I think they play a bigger role as things progress. Mata, who is this absolutely just the craziest warrior type of guy, who again honor matters so much to him. He's been hard done by, his family have been hard done by, and he's seeking vengeance. Very, very strong-willed. Mozotti, who is one of my favorite characters. She is a female general, again in a world that is really not kind to women. She was really, really good, and again I think she's another one that plays a more important role as the series progresses. The Zana Empire advisors, who did just treacherous things, are just wild. Again, people, again, when it comes to like protecting and serving your nation and doing what needs to be done, there's so many people in this book who would do whatever it takes. And there's so many characters in here, there's so many motivations, and I really did like reading about them. I think Ken Liu did a good job of balancing them, their small back stories, and then obviously with with the screen time that they got to. Like Ken Liu really does do a good job, especially with these sort of minor characters. So in terms of like fancy elements, like I said, it's a very soft magic system. It's very subtle. We have magical creatures in this book, which were pretty cool. Um, I really did like the magic system as well. Again, it's part that sometimes when I'm reading this book, like I said, it reads like a history book. Sometimes I'm reading this book and I'm just like there's no, I can't even, there's no magic in it at all. And it's not like I noticed it, but I didn't have a judgment on it. I just noticed it. And but yeah, I I like it either way. So what are some pros? I've kind of mentioned some pros and cons as I've scattered throughout this, but I do have a dedicated category as well. Um, this got very interesting as the book went along. I was, once we really start getting into the meat and potatoes of things, I was just like, whoa, and it was a lot, especially when just so many battles and just such high turnover. It was really nuts, and yeah, the women being involved, I can tell that there were some major players. That will be sorry, some characters that will be major players in the future, and the way, yeah, they're all very well done. I think another thing that's really heartbreaking about this book, but was good, was that the friendships that were souring, and how honor is interpreted, especially in terms of rules of engagement, the rules of war and battle, and whatnot. Ken Liu does a good job of adding a lot of like rich history, so that when humans were, for example, during there's this, I won't spoil it, but there are people doing certain things because of a written code by a certain philosopher or whatnot, and people follow that, or certain people follow that and certain people don't. And it's funny how people really are just so rigid and will hold on to that, that doctrine, and there's people who are like, well, it doesn't apply to me, and I know you're going to be rigid about it, so I'm going to exploit that. So I like that as well. But back to the friendships, there's a lot about friendships and loyalty to family, and it's crazy how there's so many great friendships that are built up, and Ken Liu does a great job of building them up and also destroying them. And also the nuances of questioning leadership. Are they the right person for the job, etc., etc.? Why don't you take the job? And those type of things. It is really good. Cons, even though, like I said, I started buying it, the rest of the series, when I was 50 pages in. I was sold on Ken Liu's writing, but I wouldn't say I was super immersed in the world, and I hadn't. It took me it took me quite a while to really hit that reading flow. The ones when you really just start getting into it, and you're like, okay, now we're going. It's like, you kind of, there's that meme, when you're playing like a video games, and you're like laid back, and then like you lean forward because now it's time to get serious. It took a while to hit the reading flow, but yeah, it was, listen, great book, great book. Don't let me say otherwise. It is a really good book. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.